Hi, this is Kirby Summers for the Epstein Project podcast. I've been trying to record this video now for 2 days, and the gremlins have been at me, and I've not been allowed, for one technical reason or another, not to be able to do this. However, I think I have it going, and so before I get started and this is going to be all about Ghislaine. I really want you to please like the video, subscribe. Um, so I'm going to begin this with a tweet of mine that I put out to everyone in April. And basically, I was talking about the perks that Ghislaine Maxwell has in jail. And to refresh your memory, she was arrested on July 2nd of 2020. So she's been in jail well over 400 days, um, well over a year. The trial is scheduled to commence on November 29th. It is expected to last approximately 6 weeks. So through the holidays and supposed to end during the last week of the first week. I'm sorry, the last day of the first week in January. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute or two. So, first, the perks that she has in jail, according to my information and what I tweeted out in April. She has access to desktop computers, and frankly, I'm going to update this. It's my understanding it's two computers. She has access to a laptop. She can send and receive emails. She is permitted out of her cell from 7 o'clock in the morning to 8 o'clock in the evening every single day. While she is in the day room, she has exclusive use of, again, desktop computers, the laptop, a television, and a phone to call anyone she wants. And not least of all, she has what every prisoner would probably kill to have. She has her own private bathroom. Um, that's all I have to say. It's a sort of like nobody in prison has their own private bathroom. It's kind of the most disgusting uh, part, I would think, about being in jail. But she has her own private bathroom. Okay, and then she also has, from day one, she's had more time than any other inmate to communicate with her attorneys. When she was arrested, I want to remind you, it was sort of like still the beginning of COVID. Nobody was being allowed into any jail, and the attorneys were not allowed to go to jail except for Ghislaine Maxwell. So, in Ghislaine Maxwell's case, her attorneys from the very beginning were allowed to visit her, which was surprising because, she, from day one, it was pretty obvious that she was being treated differently than any other inmate. And in fact, it reminded me, as probably it reminded you, of the special treatment that Jeffrey Epstein received in Palm Beach. All right, so then she also receives 5 hours of video teleconference calls with her attorneys every single day. So this is a total of 25 hours per week that she's allowed to just video teleconference every day. And as I said, she's allowed to meet with her attorneys in person. So she complained about the HEPA filters in the air conditioning unit that is in the room where she meets her attorneys, and the jail promptly installed new HEPA filters, which it's like, come on, seriously, you're in jail? I didn't know that if you're in jail, you can complain about the HEPA filter in the air conditioner, but leave it to Ghislaine Maxwell, daughter of super spy Robert Maxwell, the biggest thief and a con man, and so on and so forth. She complained, and the jail bent over backwards and is doing everything in their power, it seems to me, to make her as comfortable as possible. So they installed new HEPA filters at her request. Okay, she is also the first person to receive the COVID vaccine. So she was fully vaccinated before anybody was, like before the general public, quite literally, before anybody in her jail, so on and so forth. So it had occurred to me at some point, and I tweeted this earlier today, that Ghislaine's arrest, number one, she didn't expect it. We have to remember she had been living with Scott Borgerson, who is now known to be her husband, in this large estate that Borgerson purchased after his divorce or during the time that he was getting a divorce. And, he married Ghislaine. It's now pretty clear that he married her in 2016. He met her in 2014, and they were living in Manchester by the Sea in New Hampshire. Um, they were getting a lot of curious uh, neighbors and queries by journalists, and Ghislaine no longer felt safe or comfortable on the property with her husband, and so they went and they found another property, the property where she was ultimately arrested, called Tucked Away, where she was pretty much being guarded by private security guards hired by her brothers in the UK, and she was not venturing out of the house. And so on the morning of July 2nd, when she was arrested, the FBI agents, along with the local police, knocked on the door. They saw her inside. She quickly ran, because the side of the house had glass. So they saw her sitting. She ran into an interior room, into a bedroom. So the point is that, as opposed to Jeffrey Epstein, who was tipped off and told that he was going to be arrested, Ghislaine Maxwell appears to have been caught completely by surprise. What the FBI and the newspapers reported after her arrest, I will remind you, and maybe you have not heard it, but her normal cell phone had been wrapped in aluminum foil. And the reason for wrapping something in aluminum foil is so that it cannot be tracked. Because even when your phone is off, you can be tracked. That is kind of what we got from Edward Snowden, right? We got a lot of information about how the government keeps track on us, all of us, and our devices, whether they're on or off, are watching us. And so she had her phone, her regular phone, wrapped in aluminum foil. So that indicates that she just did not want anyone to know where she was. And therefore, she was not anticipating the arrest. The arrest has been interesting. She requested bail 5 times and was denied. When she initially appeared before the judge on the 14th of July, uh, there was no mention. Had refused to identify her husband. She refused to identify her assets. She only appeared before Judge Nathan and requested to be allowed to leave on bail without providing the jail any of that information. In my opinion, I 100% believe that she didn't want to say that Scott Borgerson was her husband, because she was going to flee and she was going to leave with him. Now, I've written some of this in Ghislaine Maxwell, an unauthorized biography, and I am working on a sequel to that book. It's Ghislaine Maxwell Blackmail, which covers the part of her life commencing in 1991, when she hooked up with Jeffrey Epstein at the end of the year after her father is dead to present day. You may want to read Ghislaine Maxwell, An Unauthorized Biography, if you haven't already, because there's a lot of information that shows that the trafficking ring is really much bigger than mainstream media has ever said or will ever say. In any event, it is my suspicion that Ghislaine Maxwell, who let's cut the the bull here, she's a spy. Let's remember Alex Acosta said that he was told to back off Epstein because he, quote, belonged to intelligence. Well, Ghislaine Maxwell also belongs to intelligence. And if you are receiving my Epstein Project newsletter, you will know that I write a lot about intelligence agencies. So, for example, the CIA in the United States and Mossad in Israel worked collaboratively during Iran-Contra, supplying guns and drugs, sort of getting drugs and exchanging that for guns and pouring that back into Nicaragua so that they could help the Sandinistas. Um, Not a lot of people know that Mossad was involved and that they worked collaboratively with the CIA. It's not the first time. The CIA and Mossad have worked together since, like, after the war, um, World War II. And frankly, there are other connections that predate World War II that I'm not going to get into at the moment. So that Ghislaine's father, Robert Maxwell, was exposed as being a spy by Seymour Hersh, who is a Pulitzer Prize winner. And he was, in fact, sued by Robert Maxwell for this exposure. Um, he happened to die on November the 5th, 1991, during the lawsuit. And afterwards, Nick Davies, who was also exposed as being a spy by Seymour Hersh and who worked alongside Robert Maxwell, decided not to pursue the lawsuit. Instead, everyone issued a big apology to Seymour Hersh, uh, and the case was closed. But however, it was at that moment that the world sort of became aware that Robert Maxwell was indeed a spy. And if you look at old records, you will see that he had been a spy, frankly, since he became involved in World War II, and he was a spy for various countries throughout that time. That said, his daughter Ghislaine Maxwell, and again, if you read my book, you will see how Robert Maxwell groomed Ghislaine and taught her how to be a spy. I mean, when I was looking at this information, I was surprised that nobody else picked it up. But at this point, I'm not expecting mainstream media to pick up anything because the more I dig as I write the new book, the more I realize that all of mainstream media is connected to Ghislaine Maxwell, so that the stories that we're getting are just basically clickbait. We're not really getting real stories. I think that the real stories are the people like myself and some of you who are digging, and we're connecting dots, and we're piecing together this collage of real information that mainstream will never give us. So it is my opinion that Ghislaine Maxwell was arrested in order to keep her safe, because the people who are in charge of, let's say, the CIA black ops that are always connected to the president, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat, I think that there is something there. Now, if you remember, Michael Wolff just released a book, and in his book, one of those chapters um, discusses the fact that Donald Trump, before he left office, was very close to giving Ghislaine Maxwell a pardon. He was also, according to Michael Wolff's book, curious to know if she had said anything about him. There was another incident where she clearly pointed out that yes, she had seen tapes of Bill Clinton, former president, and Donald Trump, former president, with minor girls that were being trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein and frankly herself. Um, she claimed that was not in possession of those tapes, but however, Epstein was the one who had possession of those tapes. So again, I don't want to make this too long. I just want to wrap this up by circling back and saying that I think she is being held for her protection so that she is not killed by the very powerful people who they were working for. Let's remember, they're low on the totem pole. They were the ones, her and Jeffrey Epstein were low on the totem pole. They were the ones fronting and taking the risk for this international trafficking ring that worked on behalf of one or more government agencies that included very powerful politicians, very powerful businessmen, and as all of you are aware, Leslie Wexner is one of those. Prince Andrew is another very prominent name in this entire trafficking ring. So, again, it is my opinion that she is being um, kept in jail for safety. And it kind of makes sense that even she is not that anxious to leave the jail. I think that I was on, let me just backtrack and add this thought that has been on my mind. I did a podcast, I believe a week or so ago, that just dropped yesterday. And this very nice fellow, and we just met, and he asked me, hey, do you want to do my podcast? I'm like, sure, why not? Because I think that the more people that hear this story, we need ears. We need the story to get out. So I did the podcast, and then I heard his closing statement, which I had obviously not heard because it hadn't been recorded. And in it, he was like, "And there's going to be justice," and I understand the need for justice when children are involved, when rape is involved, and everybody wants justice. However, I was a little bit disappointed that um, a lot of people who are very smart fail to recognize that this is an intelligence operation, that we're not just talking about Joe Schmo, Jane Smith, who's running a prostitution ring, let's call it that for the time being, or going around kidnapping children and was caught. If that were the case, um, done deal, right? The person, we would have had a trial or not, the person would have pled and would have been serving jail time. That's not happening in this case. I predict something unusual will happen in this case. I regret to say that I do not feel in my inner soul, and with all of the research that I have put into this, and all of the thought that I have put into this, and all of the analysis and comparing this to other cases, I do not believe we are going to get justice in the way that we should. That said, in the court of public opinion, Ghislaine Maxwell, alleged of all of these horrible crimes, is guilty. That's, and as is Prince Andrew, by the way. So anyway, I'm curious to hear if you think she is, like I said, being held for protective reasons. I think that's really the case. So again, this is Kirby Summers for the Epstein Project podcast. Enjoy the day. Till later. Bye.